Now, imagine that it's late 2020 when we were getting a handle on the coronavirus. You could finally get out of the house. And so you booked a tour to visit the technical wonders of Guadalajara. One of these stops was to an advanced quick freeze facility that flash froze food. And clumsy you fell in. That kept your frozen body in the hope that medical technology would someday be able to revive you. And about 30 years later, they did. The best technology was developed in China, and you woke up in a lab in Beijing. You felt good, surprisingly. You were also surprised to hear that it was May of 2050. And after they checked you out, you were able to leave the clinic and you went outside into the giant city. And it was not at all what you expected. The air was clear, clearer than you had ever seen except on vacation. There were all these trees planted everywhere in the city. You stood in the shade of an urban grove, and it was quiet except for the happy sounds of children playing in the trees. It was quiet because there were no internal combustion cars or buses on the street. This was beyond your expectations. And you thought that in the 30 years of global warming, it would have made cities like Beijing uninhabitable. But what happened? Things look pretty bad for the planet in 2020 with increasing pollution, bringing global climate change, heating the whole planet. This was not what people wanted when they gathered 50 years ago on the first Earth Day, April 22nd, 1970. They thought they were saving the planet, and instead it was dumped in the trash. To save the planet so our children have a chance, something momentous had to happen. The thing is that these changes are happening right now without most of us even noticing. The problem is pollution of the air. About half of this pollution is from energy production and transportation. And in the next 10 to 15 years, most of these will be converted to electric, a massive change that is driven by lower cost. Almost all cars, trucks, and buses will be electric. Short and mid-range flights will also be electric. Wind and solar power will both continue to have exponential growth because they are already the lowest cost way to produce electricity. But also because these new technologies are gaining efficiency every year. For example, a good solar cell today is 20% efficient. By 2030, they'll be 50% efficient. The technology for this has already been developed, and it won't stop there. Energy and transportation make up about half of the air pollution. Agriculture and industry make up most of the rest, and enormous change is happening in these areas. It's just slower and less visible. We also know that we can take CO2 out of the air by planting trees, and plans are already underway to plant 1 trillion new trees. There are 3 trillion trees now, so that's a giant effort around the world. Changes are coming in food production too. This involves so many people throughout the world, so change is tough, but it's already starting. One change is with indoor vertical farms, planted and tended by robots and monitored by AI systems to keep everything healthy. More and better food for less energy and water. This is being done on a small scale now, but because it's an effective solution, it's increasing throughout the world. We are also learning to create food from bacteria and algae. Algae. They will be used in new food products like you're starting to see now as alternatives to meat. Then there is cell-grown meat. Same taste, uses 1/10 of the energy and water. A number of companies are working on this today, developing and producing beef, chicken, fish, and pork. So put all this together and we get this scenario. In every decade between now and 2050, we cut pollution in half. By 2050, the air is cleaner than it was before the Industrial Revolution started, cleaner than it's been for 200 years. When we go outside, even in cities, it's so nice with all the trees. They had to plant the trillion trees somewhere, and cities got a lot of them. Global warming problems are not over, though. The sea is still rising, but this has slowed down, and we figured out how to cooperate with each other to preserve the world's fishing and the sea's abundance. So these changes, because they are driven by technological developments, they are not incremental. They will happen at unheard of rates, faster than we imagine. One example is that it took the telephone 40 years to achieve half of the people in the USA, where half the people owned one. Smartphones took less than 5 years to achieve the same growth. So economics alone, lower costs for energy, will do much of the job in creating a new planet. We are finding ways to power our homes and industries and transportation that are renewable and so much cheaper than today's fuel. Today's fuel is extracted, shipped halfway around the planet, and then burned for energy. These renewables are mostly solar and wind. Both of these are really powered by the sun, and the sun hits the earth with 10,000 times more energy than we use today to power everything. We're just learning to use this solar power, and its use will change everything. Our technology is key in this since we keep inventing new ways to solve old problems. Now back to our revived person in 2050. He couldn't believe that so much change had happened, so he went to Google, it's still there, and started asking questions. He found out that the pandemic of 2020 really started the ball rolling. People saw the organized effort of government could solve problems that industry and capitalism just couldn't. They saw another disaster that was coming with climate change, and around the world, people demanded that their governments take the same kind of urgent action to deal with this other problem that threatened mankind, climate change. They wanted governments to get out in front of this change, to lead it, to support it, to really support it like it was something that mattered the most to everyone. They wanted governments to be like sails powering the movement instead of anchors that were holding it back. He saw that the world order under which he lived had been based on neoliberal ideas, the idea that market-oriented policies are the best way to rule the countries of the world. This neoliberal order had done some good things. Between 1950 and 2020, it cut the deepest worldwide poverty from about 60% in 1960 to 10% in 2020. That's an enormous change for billions of people. The social cost was high, though. It created a new class of the super rich whose money influenced what was seen on TV, read, and watched over the internet, which politicians are elected, and what laws are made. It made a situation where half of the world's wealth belongs to the top 1%, and the top 10% hold 85% of the world's wealth, while the bottom 90%, 9 out of 10 people, hold the remaining 15% of the wealth. They saw that the wealth of this top 1%, if it were, or 10% were distributed among the lower 90%, the wealth of these people would more than triple. They felt like this is insane, that the super rich acted like they're a different species and their wealth is just what they deserve because, after all, they are better than us. They thought that this was not true, but we were just playing a rigged game, rigged for the 1%. So they demanded an economy that benefited everybody, not just the super rich. Our traveler walked the streets of Beijing and discovered something even more unusual, a Unitarian Universalist church. He went in and found they were in the midst of a festival celebrating the heroic actions that saved us all during the pandemic. They were featuring videos made by UUs at the time. He stopped at one screen that seemed familiar. It was playing a video of a web Sunday service made in 2020 in Lake Chapala. talking about an optimistic view of climate change. He missed that service because he just didn't think any good outcome was possible. Now he knew he was wrong. So have hope, everybody. Change is coming. Maybe it will be better than we thought back in the old dark days of 2020.